This is the DRB II scan tool from Chrysler. I first heard about these when I was looking through my 1993 Dodge Intrepid shop manual, and for certain operations it says use the DRB II scan tool. So I said, okay, let me go get one of those. Turns out they were over $2,000, so I never did buy one. They are available for, anywhere from $150 to $400 on the internet at times. I can't remember what I paid for it, but it wasn't $400. By itself, it's pretty useless. It'll plug in and get power, but it won't do very much unless you have the appropriate cartridge. It's kind of like an old Atari or Nintendo game system. Yeah, they plug in and give you something on the screen, but there's no games until you put a cartridge in. Early on, there were all sorts of cartridges that you needed in order to make it work, depending on year and make. They even had different cartridges for different systems on the cars. So you had to have a lot of cartridges if you were a mechanic working on cars that people would bring you. As they got later in the life of the DRB II, which was from the early 80s to the mid 90s, they started to have more general purpose cartridges. So this is the 1991-92 for Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, MMC, I don't even know what MMC is, or Diamond Star, and Jeep and Eagle. So it was a much more general for those 2 years. I bought this cartridge hoping that it would at least sort of work for my 1994 Dodge Intrepid. I had never had the appropriate cables to even test it out before I found the very useful and important super cartridge. This cartridge handles all of their makes and models from 1983 to 1994. This is what I needed. Eventually I found one. These aren't so easy to find, but eventually I saw one on eBay. I knew that the likelihood of easily finding another one wasn't great, so I just hit buy it now on it and paid about $100 for it. So with the super cartridge plugged in, it is now a useful tool if you have the right cable to connect it to the car. That also proved to be a challenge. So here's the DRB II. It's got the cable and this female 8-wire DIN connector, not mini DIN. If you get a mini DIN, it's going to be too small. So you need a male DIN, and then at the other end, you need whatever plugs into your car, and they are not all the same. This is the DRB II 16-way adapter for 1994 CC2030 that I hoped would help me. One end is the male DIN connector, which connects to the DRB II just fine. The other end is a connector that's very much like the OBD2, not DRB2, OBD2 connector that is used on all cars made since the late 90s. However, this predates OBD2, so the pins I don't think are the same. I did test it with my 2006 Chevy Avalanche, and it does light up. The DRB2 unit does come on, so its power pins are correct, but I don't think the DRB2 is of any use on a modern car. And this isn't the connector that I have on my 1994 Dodge Intrepid anyway, so it wasn't going to work. I did try getting OBD2 cables and adapters to connect up to my car, but I could tell when I was testing out the pins that that just wasn't going to work. Now my car, 1994 Dodge Intrepid, has right under the dash here this 6-pin connector. You can see it's got 2 rows of 3 pins, and it's got this little protrusion over here, so you know exactly what kind of connector you need to connect to it. So 6 wires there. One item that will work for my car is the Genesis Mentor 3305-65 cable. it has this on one end and it has a 25 pin connector on the other. I tried to use that in conjunction with the CC2030. That turned out not to be the way to go. I bought a double male-ended DIN cable and cut it so it didn't matter what was on the other end. So I had one end of this to plug into the DRB II and this to plug into my car. All I needed to do then was to match up the correct wires and splice them together. I don't know how this is going to work in any other car other than my own, so test yours before you just go with what I'm saying. So what is the pin map for my car? When I Googled DIN DRB II pin map, the very first hit I got is a pin map of this 8-pin DIN. But it's wrong. It's backwards. And I found this out the hard way because I did not check well enough into other hits to see that this was backwards. Not only that, eventually I found a place where that diagram was posted, and a few comments down, the poster said, yeah, I got this backwards, but it's still out there, and it doesn't say that on the picture at all. So in my picture, it's going to be clearly labeled that this is backwards. And what are the consequences of having it backwards? The consequence of that is your ground wire and your positive wire get spliced together, which isn't good. Fortunately, it isn't as bad as it could be. There's some resistance in the circuit somewhere that causes it not to, at least in my case, because I built it wrong the first time, causes it not to create any disasters. It just won't work. But it will heat up the cable. So don't do it. Do it right the first time. So here's my cable all put together well enough to test. There's going to be 2 unused wires on the car connector end and 1 unused wire on the DRB II end. I'm intentionally not telling you the color map because you may not get the same colors on your cables, and you should do the work to verify that you're doing it correctly rather than just going on a list of colors. So here's the pin map. You can see on the left the blue connector on my car, and the protrusion is really useful for being sure you're looking at the correct number in relation to where that is. And you can see the column of the map to the DINs, and you see 7 and 8 go to, you see that 7 and 8 on the DRB II cable go to 6 on the connector. That's why there's 1 unused wire on one and 2 on the other, because these are both 8-wire cables. Wire 4 is the one that is not used on the DRB II side. So now ready to test it out. I'm going to plug my connector into the car. So I'm all plugged in there. So now I'm ready to plug it in. As soon as I connect that, I hear a beep. I see a green and a red light. And I'm going to see it boot up. DRB II 94 Super Cartridge. Copyright 1988 to 93. Vehicles tested. If you hit enter, it gives us a list. We've got 83 to 94 Chrysler. And it didn't give us that list for very long. That's the list. And you get some help in there, how to use. You hit enter on that. And you gotta hold your F3 for help. And you can hit your down arrow, telling you how to do stuff. You can use not a lot of useful stuff in the help system. Pressing ATM will return you to the last menu, so not totally useless. Alright, so you can do configure, view change. Let's see what view is when we hit that. US metric, beeper, remote display off. That's where you can connect the unit to a screen. I'll talk about that another time because I know little of it now. So we'll go back to the main menu. Let's do select system. And our systems we have to choose from are engine, transmission, body, suspension, ABS, passive restraint, which is the airbags, theft alarm, system monitors, climate control. Those are your choices. And you push a number and you'll go into that section. Let's choose 8 to see what we get for system monitors. CCD bus test. That relates to the DRB II itself, I think, or the onboard diagnostics, where you can test out the various systems there. I know little of that, so I'm going to go back. ATM. I'm going to hit 2 because transmission is the thing I'm actually having an issue with. You got to select your correct transmission using the arrows. 42LE is the one that I have. Some things you just have to know, or I guess do experiment on. Bus test in progress. No response, and that's to be expected because I do not have the key turned. So it's going to say no response until I stick my key in. And turning it to accessory doesn't work, so I have to turn it to the on position. Now it's going to initialize. It's telling me what I have. We can do our system tests. We'll hit enter on system tests. Shift lever. This is a good test because the engine doesn't need to be running for this. So let's do the shift test. Hit enter. Shift lever test. Move shift lever to park position, which is where it already is, and press enter. Now to reverse position. And press enter. Now to the neutral position. And press enter. Now to the overdrive position. And press enter. Now to the 3 position. And press enter. Whoa. Press enter. Test passed. So my shifter is working correctly according to the system. So I put it back to park. I'm going to hit ATM to go back and get my system tests. So what I actually want to run is the clutch test, which I'm not actually going to do now. I wonder what that does. Let's hit enter there. T R N D or O 3 L. So it is getting those correct. Hit ATM to go back. Now when I go to clutch test, what it's going to do, let's say I want to test first gear, it's going to tell me start engine. Engine RPMs is 0 because it's not running. Let's go back. Let's see what it lets me do with engine. I'm just using ATM to go back and then the engine in 1 to do the engine. It tells me what I have. Transmission, serial number. I have AC. I have fuel ignition. Oh, fuel ignition testing. Charging, speed control. ATM to go back. Anyway, those are the types of things you can do with it. It's pretty easy to use so far because I've just been playing with it just a little bit, and it's not bad. So when you're done, when you unplug it, it just turns off.